There once was a dragon, blood red dragon. He was a great and terrible serpent, and his power was cunning, and his mind was brilliant. But he was wicked beyond description, beyond the imagination of any human. He did not inhabit the realms of fairy tale. Rather, the fairy tales were a shadow and a legend of what he really was. He lived in the real world, but humans could not see him. And he was bent on his own deceptive purposes. Well, this dragon hated man. He abhorred man, because man had been created in the image of the Most High King. And at one time, this dragon had been in the councils of the great High King. In fact, he hadn't always been a dragon. Once he had been a prince, esteemed greatly and highly. And that was the problem. This prince was full of pride, and that pride was a poison that coursed through his veins, and it caused him to think more highly of himself and commit treason against the High King. And the king was a just king, and he cast out this prince, had judgment set as a certain date in the future, and this prince came to the earth, and he became a dragon as his punishment. He fell like lightning, and he was given over to his wicked passions. And he had a vile ambition. He wanted to get back at the High King, because the High King had been just. And so, when the High King did something amazing, he created these little gods that were in his image, and he put them in a garden, and he saw his opportunity to mar the image of the High King by sneaking into the garden and planting in them the very same deception that had corrupted his own heart. And this is his vile plan. He thought, if I can cause them to do exactly what I did, the king, being just, will have to do the same punishment on them, and they too will become scarred and become little dragons in my image. And in this way I can get back at the High King, who loves these foolish people. Well, his plan took shape, and he snuck into the garden, and he began to weave his lies and get the people to think of themselves as maybe they could be like God. Maybe they could break the one rule that they had been given. And so they did. And sure enough, the High King came, and the relationship that they had enjoyed was ruined. That they also were cast out of this garden. But strangely, they were not turned into dragons, but they had to live by the sweat of their brow. And as the dragon listened to the dreadful punishment that was coming upon these people, he heard something that took him by surprise. That one day one of the descendants of these people would come, and his foot would crush his head. And a dread grew in the dragon's heart, and he began to watch carefully for an opportunity for when this dragon slayer would come into the world. And he began to corrupt and enslave the descendants of these people, so that they also would be just like writing graffiti on the heart of God, the High King. And so he had his terrible triumph, and he waited. And over the long years, finally, surprisingly, the dragon slayer arrived, but undetected. His mystifying entrance into the world took the dragon by surprise. Because he came in such a strange way, he was born in the likeness of feeble man. And as the day of the dreadful decision grew closer, the dragon grew only more perplexed by his strange life. Here was a person who was weak and feeble and humble, but in some ways so powerful, and he didn't know what to do. But he kept talking about his desire to die, and he thought, I'll take care of that. I will slay this dragon slayer. And finally, the chance came. Everything was correct. The stars had aligned, and all the corrupted people were in the right places, and he was able to crush the dragon slayer and kill him on a bed of blood. And he was exultant, he was excited. I have done it! I have killed the dragon slayer. But in the next morning, the tables turned, and this dragon slayer that had committed no sin rose again. And the dragon suddenly realized his foolishness, that he had been tricked, that he thought by killing the dragon slayer he would achieve his desire. But instead, he saw that instead he had actually killed a sacrificial lamb that was going to not kill him, but was redeeming the life of every one of the people that he had been torturing and maligning and enslaving through all of the generations. And he had been made a fool, and he realized his foolishness, and he began to despair. It was a nightmare morning for him, and he realized that on this cross of wood that was the thing that he had chosen to destroy the dragon slayer had now become an altar to redeem mankind. And he lifted up his voice in despair as he realized that the day that his head would be crushed was soon coming.